Welcome to the Joanne Abison podcast. And I am so super excited today because I have my very, very dear Dinah Siman. I've known Dinah for absolutely years, and it's just a joy to have her on the podcast. Thank you so much, Dinah.
Jo, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be with you. I love your podcast. As you know, I'm a big fan of your work and I love following what you do. And what I've learned with you has been inspirational over the years.
Well, thank you. Don't know what to say now. We're just going to glow in this moment of mutual admiration. Dinah, I first met in 2006 when I was teaching all about anatomy trains and integrating structure into movement and all the themes that I've been rattling on about for so long now. It's getting embarrassing because I'm so old. Dinah, congratulations are in order. You have just published a book. Can you read out the title for our listeners and hold it up for our viewers?
It's called Pilates-Based Movement for Menopause, a guide for teachers and practitioners. And I've got the advanced copy in my hand, which is very exciting. I can't quite believe it's a real book, Jo. It's a very strange process writing a book, as you know. But yeah, I'm thrilled to have done it.
Well, tell me a personal bit of how you came to kind of niche down on, because I know your skills are broad, beautiful, and very effective because you're a wonderful movement teacher in various modalities. And I've been obviously lovingly watching you for years. And you came into menopause Pilates. What was the trigger? Was it a personal experience?
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're right. I do teach a lot of different things. I love teaching, and thank you for your kind words. Well, why menopause? I think, over the last 25 years of teaching Pilates in particular, I was very conscious that my biggest demographic that I was teaching was menopausal women, and that nobody was talking about what was happening to them. And that period of time traversed when the WHI report came out about HRT, saying that it was a very dangerous hormone to take. And I witnessed women in my classes overnight coming off their hormone therapy, and the change in them was enormous. And I also started to get many more referrals from physiotherapists, osteopaths, and so on, women who had got issues which were related to menopause, but nobody was saying that. So there's no conversation about it. Nobody was talking about it. There was a lot of kind of, putting up with stuff. And I knew in my teaching that sometimes I'd be working with a client and the exercises in themselves were sound, were assisting some and not others. What was happening? And lots of things which I kept noticing would reoccur in this demographic. And it was, to be fair, once I began to move towards perimenopause myself, that I really started to think even more about it. This has all been going on. I've been conscious of it and aware that I wasn't effectively supporting these clients, doing my best, but I didn't have the information. It's like I can see the actors, but I can't see the scenery. I'm not in the whole mix of it. And then when I started to experience my own perimenopause, which was quite a full-on experience, and that went on, and I began to research more and discover that there was so little information, but gradually more was coming. And my own experience was more of a light bulb moment, which made me understand the whole process more, also understand the possible ways to support and signpost our clients. And it just really made me so passionate about wanting to share this with teachers, because I felt that, our life could be made easier. Because so many teachers, whether you're Pilates, yoga, gyrotonic, Feldenkrais, whatever you teach, usually you're on your own. There are some communities where people are working in studios or gyms, but very often you're a self-employed teacher running your own practice, and you haven't got anybody there to talk to about things or to say to you, look, you're doing a good job. You're okay. You're doing really well. You've got the skill set. You just need to learn a bit more about this or that. And very often we lose confidence in what we're doing, particularly if as a teacher, you're going into your own perimenopause. And I've seen lots of teachers burn out, and I don't know if it's burnout or it's menopause. And I just felt that actually, you know what, this information, if you had it in front of you to refer to, it could just join the dots, make life easier. And I felt passionate about sharing that with other teachers to help support their clients as well as them.
Which I mean, I'm going to thank you on everyone else's behalf. And I'm going to say, thank goodness it's in a book form because it's so accessible. And what I really love about that, Dinah, and this is one of your hallmarks actually, is that you so appreciate other people's experience, but through a humility of your own. It's not like you're standing there telling everybody what they should or would do if this happens and what they should would do if that happens. You're actually describing the experience and bringing people through it with compassion. So
Thank you.
it's a different
Well, thank you
approach.
for hearing that, because that was my aim, to share what I have learned, to make suggestions. And the book, it's aimed at supporting teachers as well. So there are things like, I have little sections which I think outside the Pilates box. So ideas for them to do things, to try a different practice, to have something to think about or journal about, as well as obviously there are some exercise protocols in there, sort of movement practice, which is appropriate at this phase of life. And I've been very fortunate because so many of the lovely teachers I've worked with, including you, have allowed me to put some of their work into the book. And I've had contributions from teachers around the world whom I've trained on my course, who have written about their experiences in their country and their community. And then they're also coming up with resources which will support people in that area of the world. So I feel like it's a team event, because I think menopause is a team event. You know, everybody gets affected by it.
I love that. Absolutely.
So, you know, we all should come together with this. And also, of course, for me, my teaching experience has only been with women in menopause, but we're talking also about trans men and non-binary people. So it's a very inclusive area, which we need to remember as well.
Mm. And I think this is where we step so carefully in, I don't see what you think of this, between what I call the science and the spirit, because you know my big flag waving thing, there's nothing biomechanical about any of us. It's 400 years old, the idea that we're biomechanical. And that was in not only a very patriarchal society, it was in a society 400 years ago that came under very strict rules and jurisdiction about what was said and done and what was behind the scenes and what was in front of the scenes, not to mention the cultural frameworks in which menopause is known or not known. I mean, women were just, it was almost seen and not heard. Certainly children were. And now what's happening is everyone's having a voice. Everyone's able to communicate. Everyone, you know, the whole ability to communicate is transforming, and it's so important that we have the language for everybody.
Absolutely.
And the science of fascia and the fascia matrix and its subtle integration with hormonal responses is such a big deal, but we can't divorce it from the spirit of the being that's animating that fascia.
Absolutely.
So there's that. I just wondered if you'd talk a little bit about how you've experienced that as, I don't want to say as a spiritual process. I'm not being kind of religious or anything like that. What I'm saying is the anima animus, the beingness of Dinah that's gone through this. Do you think that compassion shared is part of what, it's not just a team in action doing things, getting a book out, although it takes a village, I know, well done you. But the kind of, I call it the bioemotional side of it, the sense, the feeling, the stuff that's so hard to articulate, the stuff that our forefathers tried desperately, God bless them, to reduce to facts and figures and quantitative data. Can you speak to the qualitative sense that, do you not find that people just feel relieved that they're heard to start with?
Totally. That is one of the biggest things, that, you know, you create a safe space and you can talk about it. And I mentioned in my book, teaching or having a session with a lady many years ago. So I was in my 30s and she was, you know, in her 50s, and we just sat and talked. And I remember coming in the next day and there was a pot plant on the doorstep, and it was a thank you for, you heard me. We didn't do any teaching, Pilates. I don't think I even charged a session, but she was being heard, and I'm learning more about that. And I think very much with regard to menopause, so many people don't talk about it. And very often, and I'm going to just talk about women now, are in a position where they're so busy doing so many things. Maybe they've got elderly parents and young children. They've got work commitments. And so very often, as we know, what happens is they put last their own needs. And this is a massive transformation because our hormones impact every aspect of our being, you know? And so, absolutely, it is physical, it is mental, it is spiritual, it's everything. And, you know, for some women, it's a very easy transition. And for others, it's not. We are all unique. And I think just talking back about the culture and the past, I talk about the history of menopause in the book. You know, in Aristotle's day, it it was viewed that when women reached menopause, they'd become that they're reaching that point which is more desirable, as in they're more like men. You know, that was the one of the views. I
Wow.
know. Some of the stuff you
No comment.
there is some phenomenal stuff, you know, and in Victorians, the kind of treatments that they tried on women who were institutionalized, you know, they'd put leeches up the vagina, they do all sorts of things, experimenting, you know. So it has been, and you can understand why lots of women didn't talk about it, because if you were going to be persecuted because you seem to be going a bit crazy, which lots of women can feel like they're losing the plot, you can't sleep or you're hysterical, as they call it, then if you're going to suffer for having expressed yourself, you're not going to express yourself. And as we know, women didn't express themselves. And I often think about the literature that we read. If you think about Jane Austen and her characters, there's often a middle-aged lady who's in bed, shut away because she's having the vapors or she's having hysteria or she has nerves. Maybe she was going into menopause. Maybe it was a hormonal shift. So there are all sorts of things. For me personally, it is a whole body, whole mind, whole spiritual, whole person event. And it's a huge opportunity, which could be very positive if you feel that you're supported, you know where to get help, and that you're heard, without a doubt.
I love this conversation. I mean, some bits of it, that some of the things they did, my goodness. But I think what's important today as well, and I'd love you to talk about this, is that there's an aspect in the modern era where we're allowed to speak, and we're all allowed to have something of an opinion. And we are somehow expected through the increased self-awareness and self-development programs to know what on earth is going on. And the truth is, there is an element of listening to ourselves. And I would go so far as to say forgiving ourselves for simply not knowing, because menopause it's almost got a life of its own. And I love the work where the maturing female, we're talking about women at the moment, but we know we're not just limited to that. Obviously, assume this is an inclusive conversation. That we are predisposed not to include all aspects of ourselves and forgive ourselves for them because, you know, single mum, you've had that experience as well. We're expected to be everything. You're expected to be the man about the house, the mother, the father, the sister, the brother, the uncle. You've got to worry about the kids, the business that you're running so that you can bring in the money to feed them. I always used to talk about the light bulb problem. Do I see another client to pay for the time to go to the supermarket to buy the light bulbs, to climb the stall, to put the light bulbs in? And if I fall off the stall, nothing works. Or do you know what I mean? Which bit do you do first? Because it's linear. You have to do all of it. You're so capable. And yet that peak ability to remember everything and the house and the food. And this isn't just women. There's single dads out there doing incredible jobs. And then suddenly it's almost as if your own body is playing disloyal or playing maverick or playing the prankster with you from the inside out. And then you start thinking, oh my God, I'm failing. I'm not coping. Why can't I do that? And the standard you've measured yourself by is relentless and can be unforgiving.
Yeah.
Why can't I hold 3 jobs a day down and bring my kid home from school at the right time and make sure the dog's been walked and look after my parents and da 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 da? And there's this feeling that your own body's defeating you as distinct from, okay, what do I need? And into that, you've developed, and I've been watching you with love and fascination on Instagram, of you just religiously, almost every day, doing a little session that just makes that contribution of micro movement, which you know I'm completely in love with. And how did that link for you, the micro movement and the little snippets that you put on Instagram? What made that happen? Because it's such a gift.
Well, I totally am with you on the micro movement. Just to go back to what you said about how you feel like you're failing, and I completely understand that. And that's the nature of the menopause symptoms, which can be so varied that if you don't know that they're linked, you can start to think you're seriously going wrong. There's serious problems. So having the education is vital because you're not going mad, and there is help without a doubt. But the micro movements for me, that was my personal experience, because one of my major issues was pain in the perimenopause. Now, I've had pain in my life because I've got injuries from the past, and like lots of movement practitioners, I've overworked my body. I'm hypermobile. I fractured my spine, my sacrum as a child. I've had abdominal surgery, all the usual things. I don't have a body designed to do half the movements I've done, particularly ballet as a child, but I loved it. I was stubborn, kept going. So there's damage in there. And I didn't know how much damage there was. But, kept going. And then as my hormones depleted, I got more and more pain in areas I was accustomed to, like my hips. But I got very severe back pain, which I was unaccustomed to. And it would be very sudden onset, really spasm, really massive inflammation. And I injured so easily. I had old hamstring tendinopathies. They flared up just by doing something silly like bouncing on a trampoline once. And I absolutely blew them apart without having any idea I was doing that. So I got to the point where I couldn't sit for more than 15 minutes at a time. I couldn't drive anywhere. And my chiropractor, whom I see regularly, he's multi-skilled. He does myofascial work. He does all sorts of things way beyond a chiropractor. I mean, not that they're not amazing.
The best ones are amazing.
Yeah.
They are amazing.
And he said, you need an MRI scan, because I was waking up in the morning and not being able to feel one of my legs. So I had the MRI scan, and it came back and it said, yes, loads of damage. Now, not surprised, a little bit like, oh dear, it said multiple abnormalities, which was a little bit scary. Disc degeneration, cysts in my hips from labral tears, tendinopathies, arthritis, you name it, etc., etc. So I thought, okay, I should expect to be in pain. And lovely guy, he said to me, well, it's nothing we can't work with. It's great. So I could hardly move. The only thing I could do when I was teaching, I would teach with heat pads on, and I would move very, very just straight up and down sagittal plane. And I would be in a spinal extension mostly to protect my back, because flexion was just so painful. So when I would go through phases of feeling a little bit better, I would be working with micro movements. So I would be lying on the floor, legs on the sofa, constructive rest position, doing tiny micro movements just to keep things moving, breathing, really small movements of my legs in the hip joints, just reminding my body where things are. And that would be how I kept going. And this went on for several years until eventually I reached the point where I did go for help and support from a menopause specialist. And that, that goes on into another story as to what happened. But that was how I began to really feel that micro movements were supporting my body. They were really tiny little aspects of movement, but they were still movement.
So important. And I just love the way you interpret them and use them. And of course, I'm in love with that process, because I work with people who very often are elite athletes and they're burned out so young, and I know what's coming. And it's that passion for fill in the gaps, don't forget the in between, understand how the fascia works, which of course is, my hymn sheet, as you know. But what I wanted to ask you also, tell me the story, because we booked this podcast a while back and it's taken us the best part of 2 years to actually get together. Tell me what happened with Lorraine on television, because it was just something like, what's Dinah doing on the Lorraine show? That was so funny. It was fabulous.
That was funny, wasn't it? So the micro movements on Instagram, I turn them into sort of movement snacks. So it might be, one movement to help support your knee, and everything is as we know on Instagram, is very short and reels are quick and you can't get enough information in, but that's what I started with. And somehow I got picked up. One of the researchers obviously saw my stuff on Instagram, and I got an email. It was a Monday afternoon. And you know how you look at your emails and go, is that real? Because it was from somebody saying, we wondered if you'd like to come on the Lorraine show. I'm like, this can't be real. Anyway, I Googled this person. Sure enough, she was a real person. So we had a conversation. And by Wednesday night, I was going to London on the train, booked into a hotel, which they did very kindly for me. And then onto the show on Thursday morning to do movement snacks with Lorraine and Dr. Hilary. But I had very specific guidelines. It had to be on the sofa. Couldn't get off the sofa. So I did choose really, really simple things. But it was good fun to do. It was really good fun.
Well, I love it. And I just hope that it supports you in having the book get out there and, micro fame or famous 5 minutes. It's just fantastic. But you've earned it. You've worked so hard to make this difference and you've done it yourself. You walk the talk, as they say. So,
well, I'm passionate about it because I think that there's so much that people can do, but they just need to know where to look.
You talked before about prior injuries, about hypermobility, about scarring. And it's actually quite shocking to people when they discover how most people have scar tissue to deal with. And most people have some sort of prior injuries that predispose their structure. And, I remember when I was researching Yoga, Fascia, Anatomy and Movement, the first edition, it was really hard to juice this knowledge and translate it into something that made sense for movement teachers. It was hard. And people were like, well, how do you know that? I mean, if my doctor's not saying that, who are you? So for a lot of people, having a scar is something they don't think about. It's the consequence of a situation, an injury or a surgery. We think of it as an insult, but we don't understand the long-term impact that it has on the entire soft tissue matrix. Do you think understanding that holistic structural anatomy actually served the journey that you were on as a practitioner to find this out?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I had my appendix removed when I was 2. So I have an appendix scar, which I've always known. It's always been there. But that has massively influenced my body forever and is ongoing, as you know, and the connections through my body and how my body does and doesn't move. And if you add in then the fracture of the sacrum, that also, the whole thing has resulted in a lot of dysfunction. But it's my body that I've always lived in, and I've always known it like that since I was very young. And I do think that the body awareness and the understanding that my whole system is experiencing this is really important. And I think, and I mean, for me, because I studied the fascial anatomy trains with you, and then my yoga training with you was fascial, I think fascial in Pilates. That's my way of teaching in lines of pull and understanding the whole force transferal. And Pilates is very fascial, it's hugely beneficial in that way. But yes, I completely think that the system, if you can understand that estrogen receptors are all over your body and every aspect of your being is fueled by this and has to adjust to this massive change, it's just incredible. I mean, the way we upgrade really after menopause is incredible. And there are now some brilliant books out there talking about the impact of the brain and estrogen and the lack of estrogen. So I'm going to mention another book, if I may, which is Dr. Lisa Mosconi, The Menopause Brain, which was published this year. And her research is incredible because it's on female brains, which of course didn't happen for a long time. It was all research was done on male brains. But understanding the impact of this hormone on our entire system is critical, I think. I'm not sure I've answered your question.
But you've expanded it, I think. And the other aspect of that I'd be very intrigued about, but this is just me asking myself now, is that from an embryological point of view, we are heart-centered. The heart grows the brain. and the growth of the brain positions the heart, which then predisposes the design of the spine that the brain then grows down the back. So it's this incredible co-creative process. And when you talk about force transmission, which of course is what the fascia is all about, and what a lot of people find very difficult to understand the pre-tensioned nature of it, which means it's a resonance field in and of itself. So the hormonal impact is actually amplified by the structure or not. So if we're hypermobile, we have a completely different force transmission system to somebody who's super tight or hypomobile. And these differences you can spot, you can manage, but you can integrate if you know what you're looking for. Obviously, that's a specialized ability. But just having the awareness that your structure plays a role and that the female brain and the male brain are different, the female body and the male body are different, and all the in-between or overlapping or different distinctions that we're growing with, every single person, as you've said this earlier, is unique. It's what makes us all the same, actually, paradoxically, that every single one of us is unique. And if we could expand our bandwidth for equal respect, that no one is equal to anyone else, because they're not the same, or they are because they're unique. Yeah. I know that's one of those. It's a conundrum, but it's supposed to be. And we had that level of respect, and we didn't shut each other up and shut ourselves up. I think the fascia is of our inner fascial matrix, I know, is a sensory feedback system as well as a force transmission system that listens to itself. Autos, as in autoimmune, autonomy, autos means self. But when we talk about the proprioceptive sense, it's one's own self-awareness. And we know the fascia is the source of our proprioception, but it's a 361 degrees interface. It's not linear. And I think what you've done that's so particularly brilliant is you've taken a nonlinear thing. You haven't tried to quantify it. If this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. It's not that kind of 1 + 1 is 2 + 4 is whatever. You've done it in, I'm going to say this, it's going to sound a bit crazy. You've done it in the round, which is what I love. You've said, try this, try this. This is the logic behind this. Consider this. Because what that does in the subtlest and kindest way, I think, is gives us back to ourselves. You're not trying to turn everybody into a Pilates teacher. You're saying use these simple micro movements or ways of joining the dots to find your way and let your body do what it's doing and feel better about it.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yes, I think it's really important that, and I think it's so tricky too, because when women are experiencing, if they know they are experiencing perimenopause, they want somebody to sort it. But we have to take on the responsibility to look after this system, this body. And I think that's possibly one of the challenges of this phase of life, because of course menopause can hit any age. So, teenagers can go into menopause. And that's a whole other subject area to think about the support that they need.
Yes, of course.
But if you think about the sort of demographic of early 40s onwards, we are potentially being stopped in our tracks. Some not. But it's a moment to actually give yourself that love and that moment to see what you need, and to know that what works on one day might not work the next day, but that's okay. It's okay, and to not know exactly what's going to work, but to have a toolkit of things which can support you. And it's going back to that self-compassion, to give yourself that time. Maybe you need to sit and write something down. Maybe you need to just sit and be in your body. Maybe you need to move, maybe you need to sleep. But it's that self-care aspect and actually getting to know yourself again, because so many of us are too busy to actually give ourselves that time to relate to ourselves And, we've grown, we've changed. And now is an opportunity to look at that and see what it means. Nobody else can do that for us. And we know that we are self-responsible beings. But I think that at this phase in life, it's emphasized. And even if you choose to take hormone replacement therapy, it's not a magic pill. It's fantastic. It can be a bridge to so many things. And if women choose to take it and it works, it's fantastic. But you still have to do everything else. It's not going to fix everything. And that's one of the things I like about it, because it's not like just going and saying, okay, doctor, give me something, right? That's it. Now I can forget about it. No, you can't, because your hormones have always worked with you, and hormone replacement therapy works with you. So whatever you put in, it can only manage a certain amount. So you still have to think about your exercise, your sleep, what you eat, your stress levels, what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good. So I feel like it is an upgrade, it is a change, and it's an opportunity. And if we can understand that and also accept and talk about it and pause with it, then we have an opportunity to do more for ourselves, be more.
I love that. I love hearing that. And you said it so beautifully, because I think we don't give ourselves that time. You said that at the beginning. And we now live in a society where there's just so much information and such a high expectation of quantity of information handled within a specific time that you actually have to actively say no.
Absolutely.
Which we find hard, right? When you're a young mother or a young person in business and you're trying to grow a business or participate in a business, you're on call all the time. Now it's international. Time zones don't mean anything anymore because we could all be on Zoom. Certainly since lockdown, there's been a massive upgrade in, I don't know if it's an upgrade, but it's an expansion in expectations of how many places we can be at once and how many places in the world we can be online.
Yes.
And that demand has meant, oh, well, no, you can just do more. Well, no, you can't.
Exactly.
Necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something's got to give.
Yeah.
And I think the other side of that, without going into another whole subject, is also the circadian rhythms now that we have our computers with their lights on, and it's absolutely changing our hormonal light response and response to sound, and it's changing. It's changing our spiritual ecology and our physical ecology, and just giving ourselves permission to stop and breathe and attend the micro movements. And you've given a kind of permission. I don't know if you get the impact of that you've given a kind of permission to go, actually, menopause isn't an illness. It's a state change. And it's one that deserves and calls for due respect because it's mine.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you think about it, we understand that for pregnancy, we understand that for puberty, and perimenopause to postmenopause can be a long time, and yet we've ignored it. And we shouldn't. And we also know that menopause can be caused by different things, by chemotherapy, from surgery, or many different reasons. And so really expanding the conversation to include everybody, to understand what the options of support are, the choices, that we have choices, there are options. And although, again, on social media, it looks like everybody knows that, but you know what? That's a bubble. And out in the world, people don't know that.
And I love what you're saying, because it's this idea, the self-awareness is such that you permit yourself to be going through this process and permit this change that is not negative, actually. It's extremely empowering. And there's that, the thing they talk about, child maiden, mother crone. And I like saying child maiden, mother crowned, because it is the crowning glory of our maturity. It is the years and years of wisdom accumulating. If we can have compassion for ourselves and give ourselves the time and the space, that it requires a certain honoring.
Yes, absolutely. And in some cultures and communities, it is honored. But in others, it isn't. And I think that's very, very true. And I think we have to start that. We have to honor ourselves, because obviously what we put out matters. It really matters.
And it starts within.
It does. Yeah.
Well, Dinah, thank you. Thank you for the book. Thank you for the contribution, but thank you mostly for translating your own experience so that all of us can benefit from it. It's a real privilege.
Jo, thank you so much for inviting me to talk about it. I mean, it's a subject which I can just talk about for hours, as you know. And I just really, really hope that what I've produced will help people, because I want it to be a book that they just go, okay, yeah, I can look it up. I can check in here. There's information, there are resources, and so it's a useful book, because I'm a very practical person. And to me, teaching is very creative, but it's very practical. My work is practical. I want it to actually help people so they can use it. So I hope it works.
I'm sure it will. And just before we go, just tell us quickly, what's the best way to use it? Is it a read from beginning to end book? Is it a dip in and out book? Is it one of those resources that you just think, thank goodness I've got this?
It's interesting because at the beginning I put use it how you want to. You don't have to read about the history and the cultural background, but if you want a little bit of other stuff, then it's there. I would suggest, if you don't know anything about the menopausal phases, that it's a good idea to read the beginning bit after the history and so forth, because that sets the scene and it will then help you understand the rest of it. But you can skip the sciencey bits and just look at the movement protocols and the reader activities and the think outside the box activities. There's some lesson structures and plans at the back. So there's stuff that you can use. You can look up the different people who've contributed. So yeah, it's a pick and mix, really. You can read it all the way through, or you can just jump in.
Last question. Is it purely for practitioners, or would a lay person, that's the word we use, but let's face it, we're all practitioners because we all try and make ourselves well and go for walks and get moving. So say I follow you on Instagram, but I've got no intention of becoming a yoga or Pilates teacher. Would I still find value? I know I would out of the history, but are there little movement sequences I could follow?
Absolutely. You could pick up the movement sequences. You could practice the things which are suggested for the teachers. Absolutely, without a doubt. And, I'm talking, basically. It's me chatting about things I've experienced, people I've worked with. So it's quite a chatty way of writing. Anybody can read it. Anybody can read it. And if you like Pilates and you want to have some more ideas for yourself, then it's open to anybody.
Brilliant. Dinah, thank you for writing it. Thank you for being you. And thank you for coming on my podcast.
So thank you so much for having your podcast and all the work you do. It's an absolute honor and a joy to come and join you. Thank you.